The Nova Guest List Podcast.
With Kieran McGuinness.
The very best in indie, alternative and homegrown music from the seriously addictive Radio Nova.
That is Daylight Robbery on Radio Nova by the brilliant Havvk. Havvk is the band. Three-piece from, I guess, the UK and Ireland. And they just released their album, their third album, To Fall Asleep, last Friday. And then 2 days ago, they played their launch gig in Dublin. And we're very, very lucky because we have Julie Havvk on the line right now. How are you, Julie?
I'm pretty good. I'm just about awake.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. And you had a delicious donut, I believe, today.
I did. Yes, where did you hear this rumour?
Well, that's looking after yourself, and that's the kind of self-care you need to have when you're in recovery mode after gigs.
I plan to have a nice, non-eventful weekend full of little treats like donuts. So it's going well.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel to have it out?
Really good. Yeah, we basically kicked off this album with Daylight Robbery about a year ago. We were really ambitious with everything we wanted to achieve with it in terms of like kind of back-to-back visuals and really kind of drip-feeding the theme of the album throughout the whole year. And it was a lot of work, especially in terms of working on the visuals with Tim Sherwood. We kind of wanted to create a big story that would lead up and feed into the cover of the vinyl and all the artwork around the album. So it was super ambitious, but really, we built such a lovely creative community along the way. Like this last year, there's a lot of people who have helped us out. So it kind of just feels great to know that it's out there with people now, and hearing people kind of, even when they look at the vinyl and they see those little details of the bits and pieces that they saw in the Daylight Robbery video now popping up in the vinyl, and it's that little payoff of like, you were with us all along. So it's lovely. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and also I love that, idea of community and bringing that together, and also the kind of thematic connection of it. So thematically it feels like, obviously it's kind of dreams and sleep, but there's also kind of a lot of fear and anxiety and stuff in there. And like, I don't know, it must be kind of maybe freeing to get that out, but also you're kind of binding yourself to it. How does that kind of work in the long run?
Oh, I'd say it was way more freeing than the opposite. I think any stress that came with it was just us deciding to take on too much work. It was a really cathartic record. I think it's the first time we've released something that was very, very close to like a personal, I hate the word journey, but I'm just going to say it, like a personal experience. And it was something that I'd gone through about 5 years ago, where I just all of a sudden out of nowhere I had my sleeping patterns just completely turned on their head, and I would like wake up at 5 a.m, 4 a.m, just not able to get back to sleep. And it just kind of led me down this rabbit hole of, well, first of all, it was really, really difficult. But then after a while, when I realized I had to kind of step back and really think about it, it led to all sorts of really interesting conversations about kind of the different ways that sleep issues can affect us, and the ways that what we do during the day, how that can come back to either haunt you or just keep you awake at night for any reason. Like I was waking up thinking of all sorts of things, like answering emails and making lunch, and then sometimes it would be more existential than that. But it was something that got better the more I spoke to people about it, and the more that I really treated it as something, really respecting your body and your mind rather than being angry that this is happening. That was the kind of a big change of mindset that I had to go through, and channeling a lot of that into the songs was really, really helpful. But I'd say also just the conversations of, between myself and the band, and then friends of mine who would have been working in and around the project are just kind of asking me how it's going. It's kind of a universal phenomenon that we all have to sleep, but it affects us all so differently.
So, I mean, that's really interesting then, I suppose, because it's so directly tied to something. But, I mean, do you decide what you're writing about, or do you just write and then mould what comes out?
This was the most we'd kind of decided ahead of time, like, we should do a record about this, because it was just something that was repeatedly coming up in our conversations anyway. And it was something that I've leaned towards kind of journaling about anyway, because I was doing so much introspection. So this was the more conscious effort than anything else in terms of picking a topic and really going for it and seeing how we could explore it, not just in terms of songs, but as I was saying, with the visuals as well. myself and Matt are both really into our horror movies and like into our kind of Lynch moments. So like we were watching a lot of David Lynch over like this time last year when we were kind of coming up with reference points for the visuals. And I think it just really fed into a kind of narrative that we could really sink our teeth into.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's... so we're talking about the album To Fall Asleep. It's a new album by Havvk, and we're talking about that with Julie here. I mean, one of the words that just jumped out at me a lot is the word grungy. It's grungy, it's really melodic, it's really passionate, and there's a lot of kind of questioning on it. Is it the kind of thing where you're trying to soothe yourself or you're trying to affect it, you're trying to affect something? Do you know, sometimes when you write, you're kind of trying to remind yourself and affect yourself in the future. Does that make sense, that kind of dichotomy, I suppose?
Yeah, I think we are never really a band who will address something and kind of try and resolve it or solve it in our music. I feel like maybe I don't have that sense of feeling like I have answers for people or even for myself. So for us, it was more of a confrontation, and we definitely don't tackle any of the topics with any sense of kind of complacency. It's actually really about reminding yourself like how dark things can go if you don't mind yourself, if you don't address the things that kind of keep you up at night, the things that during the day stress you out, they can come back to haunt you. So even though it's a bit of, there is a lot of pursuit of calm in the record, and there's a lot of pursuit of kind of connection with your body, there's definitely this sense of like you're still going to be followed around by it if you pretend it's not there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And so when you play it live, is it easy to kind of replicate all the feelings you have in it, or is it something you have to get your head into?
Actually, with this record, it's easier than ever, because the other kind of note that we really wanted to hit with this album was, because it was a kind of coming out of lockdown album, we were like, let's make these songs as fun and achievable as possible to do live, whereas the last records we've had way more kind of layers and samples, and this time we wanted to just be as loud and immediate as a three-piece band as we could. And so we were really brutal with kind of editing back the amount of layers we needed to use, or even editing back the songs in terms of how long they were, but then challenging ourselves to see how big we could go still. And it's kind of proved itself, I think, with the first two nights of the tour. I found it easier than ever just to like sink into the songs, and it might be in part the way they're written, but I think it's also, we've just been so excited to finally play these live as well.
Yeah, it's so funny, like over the last year, talking to so many bands, over the last year and a half, I suppose, just everyone's saying the same thing. A lot of this was written during lockdown, and a lot of it is kind of powered by us wanting to get out and play to people. And as you said earlier, that community, like, it's mad. So yeah, you talked about it being loud and immediate. It absolutely is. There's loads of great tracks on it. There's a song called Take It From Me, which is so melodic. If you remixed it, it could be like a pop song. The title track is great, and the way it builds and the dreaminess of it. I love all that. But my favourite song on it is a song called You Say You Won't. And I don't know, it's just hitting some sort of 90s vibe, a kind of a retro 90s or kind of early 2000s kind of grungy vibe. And can you tell us a little bit about it? Because we're going to play it now, but I think it's great. It's called You Say You Won't.
Yeah, I absolutely loved playing that on Friday night. We had been kind of opening the set with these much more up-tempo, kind of in-your-face songs, and then when we sank into You Say You Won't, I've seen some of the pictures and the footage back. Jesus, I'm smiling so much throughout You Say You Won't. I think it just hits this kind of, like, it's the kind of music I would have listened to as a kid. I think that smile is me thinking, like, I'm finally playing the music that like really young Julie wanted to play, like the Weezer vibes. Yeah.
I suppose Weezer as well. There's the boo kind of sound, that you have sometimes.
Yeah.
That's Matt, I assume. That kind of pulling the hook back in itself. It's a great sound. It's a great album. Congratulations on it, and I hope you maximum success with it, Julie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's just such a pleasure. This is You Say You Won't from the brilliant third album by Havvk, To Fall Asleep. It's Nova.
The Nova Guest List Podcast with Kieran McGuinness. The very best in indie, alternative and homegrown music from the seriously addictive Radio Nova.